Hello and welcome to The World Today. I'm Amarachi Ubani. Here's what's coming up within the hour. The trade war between Beijing and Washington escalates, with Trump slapping 125% tariff on Chinese imports, prompting China to respond with its 84%. President Volodymyr Zelensky doubles on his claim of Chinese nationals in the Russian army, saying they're now about 155. Plus, Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz warns Hamas, saying if they do not release hostages, the IDF will engage in intense fighting across Gaza. Let's begin The World Today. The European Union has paused retaliatory tariffs against the United States for 90 days following Trump's announcement on Wednesday he was pausing tariffs across countries for the same period. EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen made the announcement in a statement earlier today. She said the EU wants to give negotiations a chance. On Wednesday, EU members voted in favor of the retaliatory decision, which was designed in response to the US 25% tariffs on steel and aluminum launched last month. The duties were due to be finalized in the coming days, with some set to come into effect on April 15. In the meantime, European shares have surged today following the announcements. US President Donald Trump has announced a 90-day tariff pause for countries affected by recent US trade measures, but raised the tariffs on Chinese goods to 125%. This coming after China boosted duty on American goods to 84%. Citing a lack of respect, Donald Trump sets China apart from other countries. He said in a social media post that he's pausing his so-called reciprocal tariffs on many other trading partners because they had responded by reaching out for talks rather than retaliating. According to U.S. Commerce Department, the United States sent a record $199 billion in exports to China last year, while China exported $463 billion in goods and services to the United States, a third behind Mexico and Canada. Top U.S. exports to China in 2024 included soybeans, aircraft, pharmaceuticals, and semiconductors. In the other direction, mobile phones, computers, toys, and clothing were among major imports from China. The manufacturing giant was the top source of U.S. imports as recently as 2022, but it's lost ground to America's neighbors and heightened tensions with the United States. We have a response from China, which is talking tough against the United States. The country's foreign ministry spokesperson Lin Jian said at a press conference earlier China's countermeasures will continue to the end. He accused the United States of acting out of selfish interests. If the plan is fully implemented, the total tariffs on goods imported into the United States from China would be as high as 104%. In response, the Chinese Commerce Ministry said China firmly opposes Trump's tariff threats, calling its previous countermeasures entirely justified. Beijing's retaliatory tariffs are scheduled to take effect today. Lin Jian said, "I believe the actions of the U.S. side do not reflect a willingness to engage in serious dialogue. The U.S., he says, should adopt an attitude of equality, respect, and reciprocity if it truly wants to negotiate." Now, as mentioned before, European stock markets saw gains today, bringing some relief to investors after recent declines. Major indexes across the continent, including the FTSE, DAX, CAC 40 and IBEX 35, recorded positive movement. Despite today's rise, the four big indexes remain below the levels seen before liberation and over the past month. Each has dropped between 5 and 10%. In Asia, China's CSI 300 index closed up by 1.35%. Hong Kong's Hang Seng index rose by 2.1%, and the Shanghai Composite Index ended the day 1.2% higher. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has warned countries that retaliate after the U.S. imposed tariffs, claiming that China is the biggest offender in global trading and the only country who has escalated in retaliation following the tariff standoff between Washington and Beijing. He was speaking at the 2025 Washington summit. Bessent warned global trading partners of potential retribution and cautioned countries who may want to follow China's path.
I believe that I had obviously been providing advice on the tariffs, working more on the tax bill that we'll talk about, and now I'm going to take a lead negotiating role in a lot of the tariffs, starting with the Japanese delegation. But in terms of escalation, unfortunately, the biggest offender in the global trading system is China, and they're the only country who's escalated. And I can tell the rest of the world that I'm not sure whether it was the prime minister or the economic minister in Spain made some comments this morning, oh, well, maybe we should align ourselves more with China. That would be cutting your own throat, because I can tell you that these Chinese exports that the U.S. tariff wall is going to keep out, that China, for all of you who can remember that Disney movie of the brooms carrying the buckets of water, that is a Chinese business model. It never stops. They just keep producing and producing and dumping, and it's going somewhere. And I think, Rob, at the end of the day, that we can probably reach a deal with our allies, with the other countries that have been long-term. They've been good military allies, not perfect economic allies, and then we can approach China as a group.
I want to bring in now international affairs analyst Dr. Charles Chukwunari, who joins us from Alberta, Canada. Dr. Chukwunari, quite a week it's been, not just for U.S. consumers, but also for global stock markets. Would you say the United States is still a global superpower at this point?
Yes. But the Trump administration is trying to deal a very vital blow to the U.S. dominance in world economic and political affairs. Like I said in my previous interviews with you, I don't think he understands the meaning of Pax Americana or American exceptionalism in contemporary international relations and, of course, world politics. I don't think he understands the role of the US dollars in world trade or international business. I don't think he understands the role of the US as the leader of the new world order. He is trying to dismantle it, but 4 years is too small for him to do that. He will wreak serious havoc on the US reputation, cause problems everywhere. But the US has strong institutions upstate that will check him. It's just a matter of time. So US still remains the great superpower, the strongest country in the world. Trump is doing a lot of damage to it, but will he succeed? How far can he go? Time will tell.
So I hear you say U.S. institutions are strong enough to curb the U.S. President Donald Trump's power, especially over the stock market. But then you have people who are members of the Trump campaign, his administration, who are heads of these institutions. What sort of checks do you think that they could provide for him? I mean, you heard the Commerce Secretary just before, coming to the interview with you, he warning other countries that follow China's path with retaliatory tariffs, that they would be shooting themselves in the foot. They would be making a grave mistake. He talked about the Chinese model. It doesn't seem like there would be much pushback, from any of these institutions checking Trump's actions while he's in office.
Well, he's using emergency powers. He's trying to be very smart about it. So he declares a state of emergency on one sector and then uses his presidential powers to bypass the Congress. But the US Senate was bold enough by the end of last week to pass a resolution exempting Canada from the US tariffs. So this is just the beginning. So you talked about his business friends. Of course, Elon Musk expectedly 2 weeks ago made some tweets tweets, which shows that he is very much against the Trump tariff world war, especially as it relates to China. Of course, you know the relationship between Tesla and China. He called, in fact, Elon Musk specifically referred to the Trump tariff policy as moronic, and that coming from the richest man in the world and the biggest donor to the Trump campaign. That coming from him was a very strong signal, and that was 2 days ago. So it wasn't surprising yesterday that he had to back down. If people like Elon Musk and some of his very rich friends are warning that this is a no, no, no. So you have the strong institutions of state like uh, uh, the U.S. Senate and then of course the judiciary on the one hand, and you have his powerful friends. Like I said in my previous interview with you, the key element, the key factor that will teach Trump a lesson is the stock market. The stock was going down, and even the bond market was going down. The hedge, in fact, people's pensions were in serious jeopardy. Trillions of dollars were wiped out in a couple of in a matter of weeks. He had to quickly put a pause. We expected that he was going to do it because there's no way he would have continued, and he did it.
But the reason, the U.S. president changed his mind really wasn't that the stock market was going down. It was because of the criticism he received from the Doge director, Elon Musk, who called him, a derogatory term yesterday. But some in the news media in the US had some thoughts on the markets rising again yesterday after President Trump made the announcement about the 90-day pause on the global tariffs, except for China. And they think that there must have been some insider trading because you had a US president who announced on his Truth Social that now would be a good time to buy. And then afterwards, he made the announcement about the tariff pause. And then all of a sudden, the market shoots up. Do you think this is all coincidence?
No. In fact, I made a mental note to call a stockbroker to buy US stock for me yesterday because 2 days ago they flew a kite. There was a rumor from the White House suggesting about the pause, and the stock market quickly started going up, and they came out to disown it and I started going down again. So I wasn't surprised yesterday when he put out the tweet and the stock started going up. So you cannot, I'm not in a position I'm not a court, I'm not a trade arbitrator, and I don't want to make any allegations against him, but this all, in fact, it will be difficult for Donald Trump to extricate himself from accusations of insider trading. And this is very, very unfortunate. He's a president of the United States of America, the leading economy in the world. And the world and the world economy depends on the leadership of the US since the end of the Second World War, the establishment of the Bretton Woods institutions, the establishment of the WTO, the promotion of free trade. This was championed by the US. So whatever comes out of the mouth of the US president or from the White House has a very, very huge impact on world trade, especially on the stock market. And he will just make statements anyhow. Some people believe that that is insider trading, and I don't see how he can extricate himself. Him and, of course, him and his staff. I don't want to use the word gang. I don't see how they can extricate themselves from accusations of insider trading. And when you look at the behavior of Donald Trump, I don't know what will happen in the next 2 years if he continues to go this way. If I borrow from the words of John Bolton, his former National Security Advisor, former ambassador to the UN. He said his reaction, he said Trump's attitude in this tariff business has been episodic, transactional, and anecdotal. And I would add, it's been eccentric and hyperbolic and highly irrational. So to answer your question, it will be difficult for him to Donald Trump and his team to extricate themselves from the accusations of insider trading.
So China has imposed a tariff of 145% on the United States. The U.S. is considering, well, let's say the U.S. president is considering 125% against China. Now, the U.S. president, he said in the course of this week, Americans need to be strong. They shouldn't whimper, shouldn't cave in, and all of that. Who really is benefiting from these trade tariffs that are, going on between the U.S. and Canada? To whose benefit is this happening?
Nobody. That is why some people would like to understand what is going on in Trump's head. Some people have tried to suggest the madman theory. But the madman theory, why it worked for people like Putin, because the madman theory in political science posits that when you project the image of the madman, that people will fear you because they can't predict what you will do. You may just wreak havoc. That's why Putin could invade Ukraine and take Crimea. People are afraid he's going to use the nuclear warhead. He's keep drawing red lines, and that effectively worked with the psyche of the former president of the U.S. And then, of course, the outgoing German chancellor. Don't cross Putin's red line, and at the end of the day, they keep crossing the red line. He didn't do anything, but they allowed him to take Crimea, and nobody. Anyway, I don't want to go into the case of Ukraine, but he admires Putin. Putin effectively uses the madman theory, and so you could see where Putin is going. Putin is very, very intelligent, is very smart, but relating it to Donald Trump, I don't even know what theory, because he doesn't even, I don't think he has international capacity to even apply any theory. I don't know what he reads, because this tariff war, nobody is gaining. Absolutely nobody is gaining. If anybody is gaining, it would have been Russia, but unfortunately, the Russian president has seeking to destroy the Russian economy with this unfortunate war in Ukraine. But you could say Russia is gaining because this man is destroying the power of the U.S. or Pax Americana or U.S. exceptionalism in the world. So and you also look at the Monroe. So the former U.S. presidents, you could sit today and look back to say, okay, you understand the Monroe Doctrine. What he was talking about was anti-colonization and imperialism, Western imperialism, especially in the West American hemisphere and elsewhere. You could understand the Harry Truman Doctrine of trying to curtail communism anywhere in the world. But how would students of international relations and political science study what Trump is doing now? What would they call it? What doctrine is that? Because this trade war, everybody's going to be a loser. I don't see who benefits. Well, I'm happy that Canada has been exempted, because you remember in my last interview, it's a previous interview with you, I told you it was impossible because of how intricately connected, how fused the supply chain between Canada and US is. It was right. There's no way. So he's exempted Canada anyway. But looking at it overall, let's who is going to gain? Take Boeing, for instance. Boeing is a US company. They assemble plane in the US. And the component is all about, it's up to 2,000 components that make up the Boeing, and it's sourced from all over the world. The engine, of course, comes from Rolls-Royce in the United Kingdom, and it goes to the US. Some components come from Canada, and the rate of it's all over the world, and it's sampled in the US. And you are doing tariff war. And if it's allowed to continue, what do you think will be the price of a Boeing 777 or a Boeing airplane in the next 1 year? Who will be able to afford it? How will it work?
You make some really valid points there. Yeah, the parts of not just a plane, but also vehicle parts. And I also understand that even the Tesla vehicles, some of their products do come from China, which is why the tariffs imposed by China will also hurt the manufacturing of those vehicles. But you also mentioned Canada, and just reading up, the Prime Minister Mark Carney recently saying that tariffs hurt, they are unwarranted, and then they are misguided. He says the tariffs threaten Canadian workers. There are still some tariffs imposed, on Canada, although they're not the ones imposed recently. The one he announced on Tuesday are not. They're not taking effect. Of course, they've been paused for 90 days, but the other tariffs that remain. Mark Carney says that the tariffs threaten Canadian workers, businesses, and families, calling them unjustified, unwarranted, and misguided. How do you think, the Canadian businesses, their companies, and all of that intend to survive through this season of the Trump tariffs, and also dealing with a U.S. president whose mood really you can't predict? You really can't say, international relations just changing. The geography of it all is just changing. The terms in which we're having this discussion will have a different discussion tomorrow because the U.S. president keeps changing his mind.
Yes, but I agree with John Bolton when he said his behavior is episodic. I'm not competent to talk about his state of his mental health. I'm not a doctor or psychiatrist, but it's very, very episodic. So tomorrow the discussion might be the same. But some of us are beginning to predict him because he's very transactional. I also borrowing from John Bolton. I think he said it's transactional, episodic, and anecdotal. So well, anyway, let me go back to your question. He talked about Canada. If you look at what he has been doing, he didn't think it through. That's why I don't know what he reads, if he ever reads. I don't know how well educated he is, because he would have known that it wouldn't work. If you look at what he's been tactically exonerating or sparing Canada. So he just says it, but when it comes to the nitty-gritty, when it comes to doing it, he's not been able to do it. But Canada, like you hear the Prime Minister, fortunately, Canada is blessed with a very, very strong and powerful Prime Minister, whom he has tremendous respect. In fact, he no longer calls him, the former Prime Minister, he was always referring to him as Governor Trudeau, but he calls this current Prime Minister as Prime Minister. At least he addresses him with some respect, because it's no match for him. This guy has a PhD in economics. He has managed the Bank of England and managed the Bank of Canada and all that. So he's not backing down. He's projecting a very robust countervailing policy that will check him. So what the US is doing in terms of Canada is they keep backing up. So it hasn't really set in, but Canada is prepared. There's a subsisting trade agreement, which Trump himself brokered his first tenure with Canada. So that is still in effect now. So he said, oh, Canada will do this, Canada will do this, but at the end of the day, he can't do it, because it's going to affect US more than it affects Canada. And he's beginning to realize it now, because he didn't think it through in the first place. And even talking about China, sorry, I missed this point the other time. About you mentioned it in this question. You talked about the threat. It's not even a threat. He has signed it. He has imposed a 125% retaliatory tariff on China. And if you add it to the one he did about fentanyl, the 20%, so that in total, that's 145%. That is really prohibitive. What you are saying basically is we don't want Chinese goods in the US. And how possible is that going to be? What is going to be
That
the
really
effect
is
on
the
the US
question.
economy?
Yeah.
You talked about Tesla. How would, in fact, there are 7 strategic rare earth minerals that the US can only get from China. And China is threatening or have even issued a directive which is even non-tariff. It's imposed a regulation that those exporters of these 7 key rare earth minerals will have to get the permit before they can ship it to the US. And these minerals are needed in the military industrial complex in the US, even in the production of F-35. So that is how, in fact, this man does not understand what the US had done since the end of the World War II, build free trade. It was the US that incorporated China into the World Trade Organization, into the World Capitalist business. US has forcefully incorporated most developing countries, in addition to the West, into the World Capitalist trade system, and he wants to undo it in a twinkle. How is US going to survive that? How is that possible? Do you know that it is only the United States of America that can print the dollar, and the dollar is the international medium of exchange everywhere in the world? What that means is that when the US prints dollar, instead of the inflation being felt in the US, it is exported evenly all over the world. Just like the former president of Nigeria was printing naira in trillions, and the inflation is that is inflation in Nigeria is only felt in Nigeria. But if the US does that, it's going to be felt all over the world, because every country's currency is measured against the US dollar, and oil is traded in the US dollar. So what if people begin to look elsewhere? And in
Dr.
fact, if he
Chukwunaro,
continues what he's doing,
I'm
sorry,
sorry to have
do
to
I
cut
still
in
have
here.
time?
Yeah, you were beginning to get carried away, but I do understand, you're passionate about this. There will be more conversations because I'm sure there will be more developments even before the end of today. Thank you again for speaking with us.
Thank you for having me. Always a pleasure.
We're off on a short break now on The World Today, still ahead. Finland raising awareness on cybersecurity through art. Stay with us. Welcome back to The World Today. Just before we came on air after the break, we learned US stocks opened down after earlier gains in the European and Asian markets. It's a mixed picture elsewhere, with European and Asian markets seeing some rises earlier. It's important to put these into context. Despite some rises, the US's S&P 500, the UK's FTSE and Germany's DAX, France's CAC 40, and Spain's IBEX 35 are still lower than they were before Donald Trump made his tariff announcement. So while there has been some good news in places, the markets are still not as strong as they were just a couple of weeks ago. I want to bring in legal practitioner Mr. Bisiriu Oluwaseyi. He joins us from Virginia Beach in Virginia, in the United States. Thank you for joining us on the program today.
Thank you for having me.
Great to have you here. I was just wondering your thoughts on these stocks going up and down, up and down. That can be good news for anyone who's watching their monies on the stock market, right?
That is true. Eventually, the stock market might get a different approach to how things work generally in the international market. And what do I mean by that is because America is the largest marketplace for everybody, and most especially for China. And when tariffs go in place, which is a protectionist measure, and historically that has been part of how some Americans or American presidents have done to protect certain industries, like Jimmy Carter did that in 1977 for sugar. And Ronald Reagan also did that to protect the big motorbikes for Harley Davidson. And this in those instances, the effect has not been as drastic as it is and so immediate. Even though there is a pause of 90 days as presented yesterday by the president, the uncertainty of recession, and the recession is the big one about the markets. The uncertainty of recession and the possibility of that happening is what keeps the market fluctuating. And the biggest concern is really about the baby boomers who are the retirees right now, and they see their 401k doing zigzaggy right now.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that is scary. And most people are just wondering whether there will be some stability to this.
Yeah, and that's what many Americans are concerned about, the stability. So I've also seen reports that the cost of everyday groceries are also going up, even eggs. Now I mention eggs because that was a major concern earlier this year. The price of eggs going up. What are they now?
They are extremely high, and we normally buy eggs. The so we have the 18 and the 12. The 18 usually go for about $6. Now they are going for about 12, $13, and at that rate, some people are trying not to eat eggs, and we see across board grocery prices going up. And with the Yale Budget Lab analysis, has it that food increase will be about 4.5%. And not just that, most Americans buy, in Africa, we go to the tailor, we give a material, we get things done. But here, most of those apparels are bought from Walmart, Target, and all these places, just to mention where most average people go to shop for apparels. And there is an analysis that these apparels are going to go up 33%. And based on the nature of Americans and obesity and large sizes, this might be a problem. Vehicles, most states operate with vehicles. Not a lot of states have the same kind of transportation network like New York, like what's it called, California, like Chicago. Most states, like where I am, if you don't have a car, you can't get to work, you can make money. So in most cases, with the vehicles, new vehicles going up 13.5%, that is a worry because new vehicles help support the economy because you have more technicians working, they pay taxes, they get paid, and also you have people buying because we are a consumer country with 70% of imports being consumer in nature. So yes, everything is going to go up, including eggs.
Wow, that certainly must not be good news for many consumers. But I've heard members of the Trump administration say that the president is acting out, taking cues from his book, The Art of the Deal. When they talk about it, I've heard them, on various U.S. media saying that the president is the ultimate negotiator, deal negotiator. They said, have his actions in recent weeks shown that? Have they attributed to this the president being a great deal maker?
I think it is yet to be seen because most of these other retaliatory tariffs are instantaneous, and negotiations don't happen within few minutes. Negotiations takes time. I think yesterday we had the Treasury chairman talking about he will be the main person in charge of negotiation. That means negotiation has not really started. And at the time being, when negotiation is not on the way, what happens? There is instantaneous reaction. The stock market reacts. The entrepreneurs react. Those that have their products at sea in containers coming to the United States react. And this is not the first time. There are indications within the administration that the president is liking his moves, his deal making moves to what the 25th president William McKinley did, who in 1901, where he raised, and they called him the tariff man, and they believe that there are so many people in the administration who appreciate the moves then, even though the administration of Mr. McKinley was considered mediocre. The effect of most of his tariffs then was not more than maybe 21 to 26%, and it's not even close to what we are seeing right now. And that even came to a point that the tariffs received from the incomes received from those tariffs became a decline, was declining as before the tariffs were implemented. So history has shown that free trade and global trade makes more income than what it is right now. But there is a sense that the president, Mr. Trump, is on a mission to remake global trading system. And that is audacious. We don't know how that's going to work out. But if the deal making thing is truly effective, we'll see whether it's going to work in the best interest of the United States. But history is not on that side so far.
What do you think, Mr. Oluwaseyi, about the tariffs that existed before President Trump made his announcements? Were they unfair to the US?
I believe they were not. So before the tariffs, the highest was 3%. And now we have an average, or let's say not the highest, the average was 3%. We have an average of 20% right now within 2 months of this administration. So it is impossible to understand whether this is a protectionist move or isolationist move by this administration, because the tendency to we have other countries in the past who have done a somewhat protectionist or isolationist move like this. North Korea has this on again and back again engagement with international trade. You have Argentina in the mid 20th century going from free trade to protectionist. And we also have the Britain in 2016 who also, exited from Brexit and created a wall of against commerce with the European Union. Even with all these, the impact has not been this bad. As in, we don't have enough impact of these couple of players, that you have the stock market reacting quickly. You have other countries giving retaliatory tariffs. So I cannot say exactly where this is going to lead to. I believe that overall, even the Smoot-Hawley Act of 1930, that was said to be the most protectionist act in the history of the United States, did not raise more than up to 6% of tariff. And it's been blamed for the recession of 1932. But overall, it's not been this bad. It's not been up to 20% as it is right now. So I cannot say that it's unfair, but uh, I've said it before. The Trump 1.0 was more transactional. What we are seeing right now of Trump 2.0 is ideological. So we don't know if that will play out well or not. Transactional, most cases it works, it's reasonable. Ideological is high ground, strong positioning, and no and rigidity. So if that is the case, I've read a couple of articles that China now has a couple of tools to work against tariffs, especially the United States, having had experience with Trump 1.0. So, and overall tariffs received during that time was sent to the Treasury Department, even though most American companies and entrepreneurs were the ones who paid these tariffs. So, I don't know if I can't say exactly whether it was unfair to the United States or not, but I think that these moves are much escalatory And it's just out of the norm, and it's creating a shock wave, a ripple effect across the world.
Indeed, and it just raises, more questions, and really raises one very important point: is how well this government will keep the president accountable. Thank you so much, Mr. Oluwaseyi. I appreciate your joining us on the program. I will be speaking to you some more in the course of these tariff regime. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much. I'll be willing to oblige.
So we're in Ukraine now, where President Volodymyr Zelensky says at least 155 Chinese citizens are fighting for Russia in the war. He made the comments after 2 Chinese fighters were captured earlier this week, marking Kyiv's first official allegation that China is supplying Russia with manpower. Speaking to journalists earlier, President Zelensky reiterated his claim that more Chinese nationals engage in the conflict based on information gathered by his government. China had previously denied that many of its citizens are fighting for Russia, saying that those claims are baseless. Meanwhile, the EU High Representative for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy, Kaja Kallas, has labeled China as the key enabler of Russia in the conflict in Ukraine. In the EU-Ukraine Association Council meeting in Brussels, she admits cooperation is needed from Beijing to stop the conflict, saying that China should take into account its trade relations with the European Union.
In the longer term, we are working towards the integration of the Ukrainian and EU defense industries. Companies in the European Union have a lot to learn from Ukraine in this regard. So altogether, we are already calculating it's providing over 50% of this Ukraine ammunition needs this year. But of course, it's 50%, so we still need to work on that. What is the main obstacle? Main obstacle is, of course, money, the funding. We have done the rearm and given the possibilities and fiscal possibilities to do this, but it's up to the member states to make the decisions. It is clear that China has been the key enabler of Russia's war of aggression. NATO has stated this also in their statements. Now the question is how are we getting this message across? China definitely wants to have good trading relations with Europe, as we are a very big market. We don't want the overcapacities to our market, and at the same time we want this war to stop. That also requires cooperation from the Chinese side.
We're off on another break now on The World Today. Still ahead. More skins for robots. I don't understand, do you? Well, let's find out together after. Stay with us. Welcome back. One of the outcomes of the Swedish Crown Princess Victoria's visit to Nigeria is the establishment of the first Swedish trade office in the country. And this will help improve trade relations between the two countries, so says the officials. It's been a busy schedule for the Swedish Crown Princess Victoria's first visit to Nigeria. Days and nights have been packed with official events strengthening Nigeria-Sweden relations. On one of those evenings, she's hosted by the business and diplomatic community in Lagos, led by the Minister of Budget and Economic Planning, Abubakar Bagudu. The evening is focused on celebrating the new Swedish trade office in Nigeria, one that celebrates a free trade between both countries, according to CEO Business Sweden, Jan Larsson.
Free trade is a basis for hope, because naturally, when we decide to get together, exchange ideas, exchange views, and exchange that trust that it takes to make trade, that will also build hope that there is a better future, that there is a future where we do not have tariffs, where we do not bring barriers between people and countries, and where we work together as effectively as we possibly can in order to solve those issues that we have ahead of us: poverty, health issues, and climate change. So I really see opening of a new trade office from Sweden here in Nigeria as a source of hope and as a source of trust and friendship. Because as the Nigerian saying goes, if the left hand washes the right hand washes the left, both hands will be clean. And I really hope that we can wash each other's hand as Nigeria and as Sweden in the future, because we will both win from that.
The Swedish Minister for Housing and Infrastructure, Andreas Carlson, who accompanied the Crown Princess, announces new agreements already signed with Nigeria and the need for both countries to stick together now more than ever before, given the current global economic changes.
It gives me great pleasure and pride to see how new partnerships are being forged between our countries. The newest examples are agreements that were signed today. 3 agreements that were signed today. The first one between Epicenter and 21st Century Technologies. The second, NCC and Swedish Swed Fund. And not at least the third one, that Scania and La Mata have agreed on a memorandum of understanding which will provide Lagos with 2,000 green buses in times of global turbulence and democratic backsliding. It is more important than ever for countries like Nigeria and Sweden to join hands, talking about washing hands, John, join hands and not lose sight of what is needed to continue building a sustainable future.
Planned for the evening is a fashion show showcasing the collection by 4 different designers. Amarachi Ubani, Channel Television News. Yeah, I was there that night. Now, in an age where digital threats are growing more complex, one cybersecurity company is finding a unique way to spark awareness through art in Helsinki, Finland. With Secure is turning the spotlight on malware in a surprising way at the Museum of Malware Art.
This is the Museum of Malware Art, and it's not your typical gallery. It's a curated experience that captures the evolution of digital attacks, daring to put them on display. Here, malicious code becomes a cautionary tale, with each exhibit unpacking a real cyber attack. Who was behind it, what damage it caused, and why it still matters today. It's a digital archive that reveals the dark side of our connected lives.
It's a piece of art inspired by a love letter, or I Love You virus, that was spanning around the year 2000. It was affecting 50 million computers in 8 days. It's only 8 days. It was it was coming from your friend on email as an attachment. Here's a love letter from me to you. And of course, you wanted to click it open. And then it affected your computer and sent itself out on everybody on your address book. In this work, we have 817 mice, which is sort of representing when you receive the email and you click it.
These aren't just stories. They're built from real code, fragments of the past preserved to remind us of the cost of neglected cybersecurity. It brings to light our growing dependence on the online world and the vulnerabilities that come with it.
We have currently 30 different MS-DOS and Windows viruses from 1987 until this year. And you can see how they have developed. In the beginning, they were like really funny pranks, mainly by the students, and they were graphically fun. Whereas nowadays, it is more money-inspired, and there's a big business behind it.
While the museum offers a visual archive of cybercrime history, one company is working to prevent such stories from repeating. For over 3 decades, Secure has been on the digital front lines. Their goal is simple but critical: fewer breaches with real protection and smarter responses.
Societies become fully digital, infrastructure is digital, public administration is digital, warfare is digital, defense is digital. So the more we turn to these technologies, the more our societies become digitalized, the more there is a need of making sure that these systems are secure, that are used properly, and they don't cause harm to others, right? There is no going back to before when this technology was unleashed. We need to learn to use it, we need to be competitive with it, and we need to be aware of the challenges it brings. That's not like everything else. It's a tool that now is here to stay.
The Museum of Malware Art and WizSecure may seem worlds apart. One a digital time capsule, the other a fortress for the future. And in this unlikely pairing of malware and art, one truth is clear. In order to protect the future, we must learn from the past, because in the digital age, every file has a story and every click has a consequence. Olayemi Oshidende from Helsinki in Finland for Channels Television News.
We'll be ending with another tech story. A company in Shenzhen, a major innovation hub in southern China's Guangdong province, has developed an ultra-thin, highly realistic, stretchable e-skin, which could give robots a sense of touch akin to that of humans. According to reports, a small piece of e-skin features up to 4,000 microsensors, enabling it to detect even the slightest changes. Its design also ensures that if part of it is damaged, the remaining sections continue to function. There are various robotic e-skins detecting external pressure, with e-skins being applied to robotic hands and arms in action. Meanwhile, local robotics firm Shenzhen Yujiang Technology has developed a new generation of collaborative robots with over 80,000 shipped globally. Inside the company's showroom, a humanoid AI robot showcases its abilities by performing an entire hospitality routine, waving its hands and serving drinks. Well, you'd wait a while for that robot to be done doing the dishes. But thanks for watching The World Today. I'm Amarachi Ibani.